All right, we are back for our very last session of the day, which is going to be a panel discussion. And so this is all about online video classes. We have somebody from Babbel, Lingoda, Chatterbug, and Busuu all joining us. And they will be discussing the different approaches each of their companies have to video lessons, as well as what they're currently working on, their plans for the future, and more. The panel will be moderated today by Lindsay, who is already out here. She is a polyglot founder of Lindsay Does Language and an organizer of the Women in Language Conference. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hey, hello. I've been kind of having everything on in the background all day. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, all right. Well, let me just start bringing out our panelists. I'm going to leave.
Hello.
Hello. I think we'll do one more. We'll wait until Felix joins and then we will get started. And I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. We can probably start that while we're waiting for Felix. So Scott, would you like to go first?
Sure. Some of you, if you've been around this long, may have remembered seeing me at the very beginning of this conference. My name is Scott Chacon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chatterbug. It's 8:30 in the morning here in California, so I do have my 3-month-old daughter with me. So I apologize if that becomes an issue later on, but I think she'll sleep for a while. So it's great to meet everybody and participate in this panel.
Excellent. And Belen, hello.
Hi, everybody. I am director of Babbel Live, a newly launched group classes service within Babbel. Before this, I was working at Babbel as well, establishing their product marketing team. And in the past, I've worked with their startups such as SoundCloud and with Rocket Internet.
Excellent. And Neil, welcome.
Hi, yes, I'm lead product manager for learning experience at Busuu. So that's all about combining different teams that work on our self-access, live lessons, vibrant and supportive community, and our smart learning tech, all in an attempt to provide the best language, best way to learn a language.
Excellent. All right, well, we will get started. I believe Felix is having a couple of, oh, there's Felix. Let's see, one moment. Felix, can you hear us? Paging Felix. I feel like I'm hosting a Eurovision voting panel right now. Okay, so we'll get started with some questions because we've got a lot to cover. We're going to be talking today about online video lessons, a few general questions to start us off, and then discussing a few things like teachers, curriculum, COVID, and technology as well. So to begin, I'd love to ask you, what can online video classes offer that in-person classes can't, and also that pure self-study apps can't either? So Scott, would you like to start us off? And Felix, hello, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Hey, Felix.
Technical problems.
That's all right, no problem. In fact, Felix, do you want to do a very, very quick introduction before we go to that?
Yes, I'm gonna do it as quick as I can. So I'm one of the founders and managing directors of Lingoda. We do live online tutoring in groups since 2013, since a very long time. I have my background in offline language schools, and currently I'm responsible for our B2B expansion.
Excellent. All right. So Scott, take it away then on that first question.
Sure.
Can you remember the question?
Yeah. Sort of what is online language classes offer that in-person classes and apps don't. And I think actually my experience trying to learn French, or I think almost anybody's experience trying to learn a language, makes it somewhat clear. I think you become good at what you practice, right? And when you're in in-person language classes, I think one of the downsides is that they tend to be group classes, and you tend to mostly practice with other people that are learning the language, which has some benefits, but you really miss, I think, a lot of hearing a native speaker ask you specific questions, interact with you, and be able to be understood by a native speaker. And having online language classes, I think, especially one-on-one, in my experience, is really helpful in practicing being understood by a native speaker and understanding a native speaker and going through that back and forth, right? That I think is really, really valuable. And as far as apps go, I mean, it goes even farther down this route of natural language input. I mean, you can watch videos, which I think can be really valuable as well, to get sort of this natural language input from television shows or YouTube videos or something. But interacting with a native speaker is a little bit of a different dance, and I think it's something that's really valuable to get used to. And what you don't want is to use an app with essentially no natural language input, and then go somewhere and practice, try out, hey, can I have a coffee in German or something? And then they understand you, which is great. You win this round, and then you don't understand anything that they say back to you and feel bad about yourself, right? So I think really going through this with a speaker, with a native speaker, is great. And online really makes it so you can access, millions of people around the world to do this with, which I think is a huge advantage.
That's really true. It's very much, it feels like everything fits together as pieces of a whole puzzle, Belen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think particularly when it comes to online platforms for booking, I think there's two huge advantages that traditional language schools don't offer. One is this option to really choose your teacher, even be able to, test a few and land with that person that makes you vibrate. We all have experiences from, it can be language learning or physics or math, that teacher that made you fall in love with a subject. And I think that when we are able to deliver that through our product, we've taken on the biggest motivation for the learner, which happens a little bit as well when it comes to topics, right? Languages are this immense amount of content that you could possibly go for. And when you're able to really focus on the topic that is most interesting or immediate for you, then certainly it's going to increase your motivation, it's going to increase your practice. And then the third one that for me is very unique to group classes. Private one-on-one has their benefits, but there's a sense of relatability that happens when you're in a class with 2, 3, 4 other students and you see them just struggle rolling that R in French, that you're like, oh my God, I have the same struggle. And it's impossible almost to deliver that through an app. You can put as many beautiful little messages and nudges that you're not going to have that feeling of I'm suffering with you. And okay, I'm not the only one suffering through this. It's okay. And yeah, I find that a very, very valuable thing of group classes.
That's very true. The shared pain.
Yeah.
Neil, anything to add on that?
Yeah, so sort of picking up on what Belen was saying. So one thing, I started my career in the classroom, bricks and mortar, teaching kids often. And although it was great to hear back loads of little Thai kids and Hong Kong kids coming back to me with a Birmingham accent, I found now that actually I'm an online learner now, and having the variety as well as being able to choose teachers, but having that variety of teachers. So I've had teachers from Côte d'Ivoire, from France, from Canada, from Cameroon, from Belgium. And that's just great. That's just I really like that. That's really nice. The other thing, from a product perspective, the having the online classes, which you can't do in bricks and mortar, and I used to run schools in bricks and mortar as well, was to easily make data-driven decisions. So we get so much more data now with our classes, what's going on. We know sort of retention metrics. We know if we tweak something, what impact that will have further down the funnel. So getting the data of how people behave with their classes, what triggers them to rebook, for example, to come back. These are all super important and really difficult to sort of measure that and test hypotheses when you're working bricks and mortar compared to digital.
Excellent. And Felix, just to recap the question so you can have a say on this. The question was, what can online video classes offer that in-person classes and pure self-study apps on courses can't?
Yes. Interesting question. Like building on what Neil has said. I think that the biggest convenience comes in comparison to brick and mortar language schools. I think online comes with a flexibility and availability of a vast majority of classes. I always say an offline language school like the Goethe Institute around the corner or so, they have 5 to maximum 10 classes happening at the same time. Whereas at Lingoda, we have a lot more classes. Like yesterday night, like there were 1,500 classes available. Like imagine this to be like a school building, right? And then having like access to this amazing variety of classes at the tip of your finger. So for me, this convenience and availability to a variety of topics is like the biggest advantage, I would say. And there was also a discussion going on, like Scott, like private classes or one-to-one classes versus group classes. Just to add what the bunch has said before, like I love group classes a lot. Like we do also teach a lot of private classes on our platform. I think group classes is like a game changer. Like I was last year I took Turkish classes like one-on-one after work. I had this dude writing me a message on LinkedIn, and then okay, I'm gonna learn some Turkish with you. And I took these classes after work, and it was like, damn, it was so challenging, like to have this one-on-one interface with this person, and then being on the run like the entire class, and you couldn't hide, behind other students. So and like group classes, it's a much more natural setting where like you have a natural implied like listening part in the class that you learn. But then again, like you also interact with different accents, etc., and it just makes the learning experience so much better. And the last thing, like since we're all entrepreneurs in the online language space, is like I think we are not there yet, like to have fully discovered and unleashed the full potential of what online classes can be. Like in the historic context, like in the last 500 years, like not much has changed. You have this teacher, or this mentor, and then there's a group of students in a room, and now suddenly this dimension of room is completely evaporated, right? Like when I take a class and learn Spanish on our platform, I meet with people from Sao Paulo, Paris, and Madrid, like my teacher being from Madrid, like I meet with them and connect with them in an environment. And this as itself is like such a motivator also to learn languages. And I am looking forward so much, what virtual reality is going to bring in the future, and how this big value gap, like even moves more towards the online classes. So this is something I'm very excited about.
Thank you, Felix. That actually leads really nicely to the next question I had, which was about the difference, and we touched on this already. I think it was Belen, you touched on this, the difference between one-on-one and group lessons when we're thinking about online classes. And it can be a bit of a choice sometimes, because maybe you have like time or money, you've got to pick between one or the other. So do you have any thoughts on the kind of the benefits or perhaps the drawbacks of either of those options? So Scott, we'll come back to you first on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's something that we've considered, I think, for the 5 years that we've been running this. Is one of the biggest benefits is affordability, right? I mean, if you have 6 people in the class, then you can pay 1/6 and still make the class, sort of doable. And so I think it's very appealing to people. What we always kind of wanted to, one of the things that you really lose that I think made us not go down that route, really only offer the one-on-one classes, is sort of the customizability, right? When you have one student, then you can create a custom lesson plan that's only for that student. You can practice mastery learning in a way that's really difficult with a group class. And the more people you have in a group class, the more difficult it is to find a right time. You lose some flexibility with that as well, right? You have to pick a specific time or join a specific sort of more generalized class. And this is a problem with any group class, with in-person group classes, with online group classes. And the benefits and drawbacks are sort of the same. But if you have any one-on-one classes, if you hire a private tutor for your kid or whatever, right, then you're really going to have a lot of the same benefits of being able to work on, pass over the things that are easy for them and they really don't need to work on when the other, the rest of the class needs to, and really sit and focus and work on things that they do need to work on until they get good at it, and even if the rest of the class is already good at it, right? And so I think that's, our back and forth has always been, we'd rather have, more input through videos, through, if you're just going to sit there and not talk for 80% of the time, we'd rather have something that's more passive if you're going to be passive. And then when you're in this one-on-one class, to really try to take advantage and be as efficient as possible and have you practice, right, in a way that all of the attention is on you. But you're right, it is, the downside it is very intense, right? So it's kind of how intense do you want this to be?
Yeah, excellent. Belen, anything to add to that?
We go, I think, a lot back to what Felix was mentioning around the intensity of the two options, right? When you, we compare a little bit of what it would be a personal coach if you're trying to get fit, and how there's people with high dedication that will go for this option, will pay more, will have someone dedicated for them, completely targeted approach. But knowing that there's a vast majority that chooses a gym or working from home, we also think that there's a lot of value on allowing to that majority to graduate the intensity that they want to have today. So their focus may vary a little bit week per week. Their headspace might even be different week per week. And group classes, I feel, gives that opportunity to say, okay, today I'm full energy mode. I'm going to be the one contributing all of the time when the teacher asks, or today I'm just going to be here when I get called out. The part that we still miss a lot, I would say, is this accountability of a one-on-one class, especially when you start rolling into a fixed schedule with a fixed person. There is just such a pressure on not letting that person down that that's just something that we don't have as an ingredient in group classes, unfortunately.
That's a really interesting point. Neil?
Yeah, so I've changed my mind on this. So I used to think, like, when I was learning languages sort of face-to-face, I remember learning Thai when I lived in Thailand, as I said, I taught out there, and I had a one-to-one tutor. I went to group lessons. I always found the one-to-one, that was the thing that really propelled my learning, my own language learning, face-to-face. And I kind of thought that it would be the same online, but actually since I've been learning online, I've changed my mind. I find the group environment online actually personally preferable. And I think it's partly that intensity that Scott was talking about. Like, it is fully intense doing a one-to-one online. I mean, we're all pretty zoomed out after the last 14 months, and like doing another intensive sort of one-to-one online is just tiring. And I was surprised. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing because I've been in education for 20 years, but I was just surprised how much I'd learned from everybody else in the group class. I mean, there's obviously challenges with the group class dynamics, and, you know, the group class dynamics online are different to face-to-face, but that ability, that sort of, like, you know, not always being the focus as you are in a one-to-one is just, which I think is just, it's much more tiring when you're doing that one-to-one online than it is face-to-face. So yeah, I've kind of pivoted in my own beliefs here.
Interesting. This is exactly why we all have to keep learning languages on top of all the work we're doing, right? To find out these changes for ourselves as well. Felix?
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be preferences for both. I personally might even consider taking some private classes myself, but I think just from a value proposition standpoint, like group classes are way superior, right? Like if you look at the investment in terms of like time, right? Like you get almost the same, or like our data actually shows that in some cases you get more out of group classes. When you learn for 20 hours with a group or with like an individual, you're almost at the exact same like progression. And this is from a time investment. Then from a money investment, from a customer perspective, like it does make sense to share the resource of a teacher. You know, this is the dominant model. You know, how we can also like observe what's happening in the offline space. Most classes or most language courses conducted are like group classes, and you share this resource of a teacher. And then group classes operationally is super tough to do, right? Like for online, where you suddenly have to match people with their curriculum, with their learning preferences, with their learning progression, with teachers, and then like-minded students, and then ideally friends too, right? Like this is a lot of complexity that, quite frankly, when we started doing this in 2013, like. It didn't make a lot of sense for a long time, yeah. But you need this capacity at some point where then suddenly you have this availability and you have the scale that it does make sense to offer those group classes. And the last thing that I want to say, like building on what you have said, right? Like you learn a lot from what other people's mistakes are. Like I think learning a language is not, like you don't acquire a number of vocabulary and then grammar rules, right? But it's like practicing a sport, right? Like it's about pushing the ball over the net like 10,000 times. That makes you better. And we don't always have to fail ourselves, right? It's very nice in a group class context to observe other people fail and take their share of the failure and offer you an opportunity to participate in their pain, yeah, and learn from this too. And it just makes for a more pleasant experience overall for me personally, yeah. But this is based on this terrible Turkish learning experience that I had like last year, which was very intense and not very fruitful.
Yeah, it's amazing the impact that kind of thing can have. Let's move on to talk about teachers. So what do you all look for when it comes to hiring teachers for video lessons, and what makes a great online teacher? Is it a different skill set to in-person teaching for online? Belen, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. What do we look for? Certainly teaching qualifications, like that's a must-have, as well as a CFR C2 in their teaching language. We're not too obsessed about native speakers. We've learned through the years that this is not an essential ingredient for a fantastic teacher, although we do offer it for some B2B companies when this is an essential for them. In terms of traits, I think you also meant a little bit on this angle. Tech savviness for sure. We don't need this person to have their own YouTube channel, but we need to be sure, and we test this through our recruiting, that you're capable to adapt to this environment. Highly communicative, and then energetic, passionate. Being able to build a rapport quickly within 3 minutes in a group of people, it's a massive challenge. And then do it again 8 times a day. That takes a specific personality. So that's, I would say, the 3 things outside of qualifications that we look for.
Excellent. And Neil, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, similar answer. I think like through recruitment, one of the things that can come through for that. So we ask for videos of the teachers, and that just shows a certain level of digital literacy, I suppose. Like, is there a certain level of professionalism there? Or is there all sorts of chaos going on in the background? Is the microphone really crappy? Is the video quality really crappy? I mean, that's just a big red flag immediately there. So can you, do you have that competence to, with the sort of digital stuff? Also then, I think a good teacher is a good teacher. And actually I remember when sort of online teaching came to the fore and people started moving from the classroom to online. I actually noticed at the beginning, it was the sort of shy teachers, the ones that actually, let's be honest, weren't that good at teaching. They kind of gravitated towards online teaching because they thought, oh, I don't need to be in the classroom anymore. I don't need to it's not the same skill set. And guess what? They were rubbish teachers online as well. So I think sort of like having that, you need that gravitas, you need that sort of energy, even more so online, to be able to sort of penetrate the sort of screen and to be able to keep things together. Keeping that group dynamic together when you've got a group of people online is arguably much harder than if you're in a classroom.
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers in schools have found this out in the past year for sure. Felix.
Yes, sure. Like just building on what has said, I will not repeat all of it, but like certificates are really important, and like for us, it's very important that the teacher is actually like a qualified teacher. Like there's this thing going on some platforms where I'm a native speaker, so I can be a teacher, and like this is something that we fundamentally disagree with. Like it's like a teacher, they did a bachelor study or like a master program, and they really know their stuff, right? They might they appear similar, right, in the first 5 minutes of the conversation of the class, but after some time, you really want to have a professional teaching a class. So that's one of the things, and that's why I think traditional elements like certificates are important, and are part of any of our hiring processes, I believe. But building on that, the interesting thing that we found out is we kind of we collect data. Like Neil, you said this in the last thing, but we do collect a lot of data now. And what's super interesting is to to understand who are the great teachers on the platform that are really liked by the students, that reach the learning outcomes of the class, and then go back to the data and then like, what do great teachers actually have in common? And like, this is a secret sauce, you know, like that where we look at data points that are surprising almost, right? Like they are not a secret per se. I can share some of you, but like teachers that like speak at least 3 languages, they outperform other teachers by far because they have been in the same situation, and just knowing that like a teacher with the same certification but speaks more languages, like we know this teacher is a really, really good teacher, or like likely is going to be a much better teacher. And then like things like tech savviness, the ability, you know, like I had trouble joining the room, right? Like a good teacher would be able to explain to me like how to actually turn on my camera, right? Like, and this is something that we collect this data, and then, you know, like looking back, like this is something that we know now how to look for, right? And how to achieve this excellency. And then the last thing is we believe also in the future biography of a teacher. Like in offline classes, what's happening is that, you know, like the teacher goes into class, the students goes into class, the door closes, and then, you know, like the feedback cycle is missing, right? Like if you're a shitty teacher, chances are that in 20 years of your career, few people will tell you, yeah. And for online teaching, you know, like we ask for feedback, you know, we ask our students, we look at what they learn, right? We have a rigorous system of like how to assess like certain quality, and it doesn't come like with the intent to like use this feedback to punish the teacher, but like actually opening up this feedback cycle to the teachers, like actually helps them to be much more aware, right? And then like if somebody has problems with, you know, like giving the opportunity to ask questions, like a simplest thing, right? That you can improve like that without like a course, right? Like we can just share this information, like show the incidences where this has been shared with us. And then, you know, like we see teachers that teach with us that, you know, have a certain quality, and then we help them to become much better teachers in the future. And like this investment for us has always paid off. Yeah, like because teachers are learners and they are very they're good recipients of feedback. So these were my points in addition to what the others have said.
Excellent, thank you. And Scott, just to wrap up on that question.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I once again have a very different opinion than the rest of the group here, and part of this I think is because of the nature of the platform that we run, right? Where we do all one-on-one classes, we don't do group classes, and so and we also, I think interestingly, compared to a lot of other platforms that do one-on-one classes, you don't necessarily, in fact, in many cases, you don't have the same teacher every time, but the curriculum follows you through, which we actually find very valuable because, for instance, when I was learning Japanese, I only had one tutor, and I learned all of my Japanese from one tutor, and then I got there and I heard somebody with a different accent or a different speaking style, and it was very difficult for me to understand. I think with German, I've had probably 100 tutors on our platform alone, right? And so people from Austria, people from you know, all over Germany, right? People from the Schweiz, like I've been exposed to a lot of different speaking styles and accents and whatnot, and I think that that's very valuable. So what we look for in a tutor is actually a little bit different. A lot of the didactics, because you're switching tutors all of the time, a lot of the things that a teaching credential really provides, the tooling, a lot of them become somewhat unnecessary on our platform because you're not tracking the student's progress necessarily, right? It may be the first time that you've seen them, or you saw them a month ago, and you know, they've made a lot of we've tried to build a lot of the didactics or sort of pedagogical influence into our software and our system itself. And so we're really looking, and they're all one-on-one classes, and so you don't have group group class management issues that you have to deal with, which again is a lot of what, when you get a teaching credential, there's a lot of these skill sets that we actually don't need. What we do need is a really friendly person, because as you're saying, it's the one-on-one classes, right? Like we're trying to get around that problem of, it's scary to speak to one person in a language you don't know very well, sort of one-on-one for any amount of time. And so we really want to optimize for, we don't really care that they're credentialed, we want to care that people like talking to them. And we have credentialed teachers, and we have uncredentialed, and we have people who haven't gone through classes for this. We have people in college, still getting a master's in science, or we have people who were teachers for 40 years, right, and retired and do this because they like talking to people. And what we found, we have native speakers and non-native speakers, and what we found is actually it's highly dependent. There's no good teachers on our platform, right? Like there are teachers that are highly divisive. There are people who are some people really don't like them and just sort of blacklist them. Like I don't want to have that tutor again. And the same number of people who are like, that's my favorite tutor. They're really hard on me. They really make me think. We have a lot of people who like to switch around, right? Have multiple different tutors, like hard tutors on Tuesday, and then the sort of laid back tutors the rest of the day, right? And so I think our platform makes my opinion on that a little bit different. The needs that we have are, you want to be able to connect and then go over the stuff that you want to go over, either go through our curriculum or just chat, right? Like we have people that kind of do both or go back and forth. There's a lot of that, but we value people that are nice. Honestly, like friendliness is what we're trying to do is make it so that you feel comfortable going and ordering a coffee and having that one-on-one conversation, which is something that you only get if you're practicing one-on-one conversations all the time. And so we want you to have that with lots of different people, and we want that process to be approachable.
It makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting to hear the different perspectives on that. And I wonder if your answers to this next question are going to vary as well. So that's in terms of what you're looking for with teachers coming in. How about the onboarding and the training for online video teachers? How do you do that, and how do you provide them through feedback and ongoing growth opportunities throughout? So Neil, we'll start with you on this question.
Yeah, sure. So we have a help center, teacher resource center for our teachers with Loom videos explaining the platform, because they need to understand the affordances of the platform, need to be able to run a good class online. So obviously this is just table stakes, really, that knowledge of the ecosystem. And then putting in place a teacher training program where similarly, it's pretty much the same as any other teacher training program. I don't think there's much difference here. Focus on observation, peer review, self-reflection, continuous professional development. I mean, all these things are just, the same, and I don't think there's anything particularly different there. I think there's one interesting aspect of the online classroom is about cultural understanding. So when you're teaching in a particular country or in a sort of groups in a face-to-face setting, in a bricks and mortar setting, you can be much more aware of the sort of cultural forces at play. But then in an online class, you've got people from all around the world. So you need to sort of be able to understand that, cultural norms may not be different. So for example, we know that, like, I don't know, let's just take an example of somebody from Saudi Arabia, for example, joining class. She may not want her camera on because it's a mixed group. It might not feel comfortable to her. So sort of understanding that some people are just culturally not going to want to have their camera on. It's not necessarily just a technical thing. So having that sort of like a sort of bit more of a global cultural understanding, I think, is going to be really important, and making people sort of aware of.
That's a very, very good point. Felix.
Yes, so I'm second in line. That's new to me. Like, Neil, I like you so much. I think we should become friends. Like, it resonates so much with what you're saying. It's truly remarkable and true what you say. And before I say this, like short personal story of mine, one of the things that we also look at, like we have predictors of like what a good teacher might look like, and we determine this in the hiring process. And then the onboarding is also, like, hey, this teacher is qualified, right? Like, so we do connect this teacher with students. And after teaching 4 or 5 group classes, with like 4 or 5 participants each, like the reality is that we have a lot of data points, right? That help us to help the teacher, right? Or also make a decision, yeah. if the feedback was really, really bad, which is rarely the case, quite frankly. But what do we do in this situation? So like data, just in addition to what might be interesting in this round. And then like this cultural sensitivity is actually like a very important like cultural point for us. Like one of the first German classes that we hosted, it was a German class about like wearing a headscarf in Germany, right? Like a politically like questionable topic. And then the teacher was like a gay teacher situated in Stuttgart. And then we had a person from the army of Israel in the class, and we had a very conservative Muslim from Palestine, and like these people were in a class together with the guy from Madrid who told us the story later, and it was a terrible outcome. Yeah, like everybody left Lingoda because of this terrible experience that they had, and like knowing that you shouldn't talk about like a headscarf with like a certain audience, right, was like a big first learning, right? Also talking about like Hollywood stars, etc., is something that like we try to be culturally very sensitive about because we have customers from 80 countries, and then like preparing our teachers for a situation like that, right? Also like our women teachers, right? To prepare them for situations that they might come with, like encountering different cultural circles in the world. Like this is indeed something that like you cannot overvalue enough, and that leads to something that you don't think of, you know, like being based in Berlin, working with mostly Western cultures, setting up those processes.
I imagine that's something that's very continuous as well, that training, you know, 200 plus countries in the world, it's ever going. Scott?
Yeah, so I mean, I think our onboarding process, the question was onboarding, yes, is very similar. I think we have a video application process where we can see, you know, is this person sort of simpatico, right? Like, would people generally like to have a conversation with them? We have an online sort of onboarding, right, where they go through and do training through this LMS, and so they know our system. They do a call with a tutor trainer here and go through, you know, how to use the online class. Like we have our own online classroom and everything, so how to use everything. And then we circle back if there's any negative, you know, problems. If anybody sort of thumbs down somebody and doesn't want to meet with them again, we try to figure out what happened. You know, why is that? And I believe we connect them with people who have had lots of lessons first to kind of go through the first lessons that they're actually doing. The biggest problem when a student comes on is really their first lesson, right? Like the first lesson that you have, it makes a big difference whether you stay on that platform or not. But the 50th lesson that you have, you know, if you have something you didn't enjoy quite as much, it's really less demotivating, and that's really what's important. So, and we have I believe after our 20th or 100th live lesson, we have them go through and do more sort of LMS. You know, online classes. So we put a lot into tutor training and into tutor management and making sure that our tutors are having the tools that they need and a good experience, and then the students as well.
Excellent, thank you. Hélène?
Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat on the basis. I'm happy to see that we all have that figured out. Class management techniques, everything from how to give positive reinforcement to how to manage the tech. I think our guidance and support to teachers varies also from the beginning moment and the ongoing one. At the start, we put a bit more focus on making sure that they know how to focus on what we call standardization. So making sure that at the beginning they're able to check on the key ingredients that would make a class feel like Babel Live. We want teachers to be engaging. We want them to be one part of our learning ecosystem. So at any given point, our teachers are not just letting you know what the content is about, but they're supporting you on all of the other learning elements that you could be tapping into within Babel. And third, they really make sure that for you, this class is not just about declination, but it's also about understanding the culture of the language that you're tapping into. Once that is a bit of the beginning part, like we've just said, a first month is understood within our relationship with the teacher, we start what we call the teacher development path. We normally place teachers within 4 levels, and we have different development paths depending on what level of proficiency that teacher is at. They get periodic training over I believe is once a month for that specific level, and then there are periodic talks, which are a bit bigger topics. Some speakers that we bring for our whole teacher pool, also monthly and quarterly.
Excellent. Following on from our discussion on teachers, I'd love to ask a question now about curriculum. So how do you create curriculum for online video classes? Is it quite integrated with, video lessons and self-study elements as well? What does that look like? Felix, I think we're at the point where we're starting with you now.
That puts a lot of pressure on me. No, I mean, like in terms of like developing our curriculum, I think in the last 20 years or so, like we have advanced a lot, and something that we truly believe in is this common European framework of reference for languages, the CEFR, that we use as a guideline to build our curriculum. And then in terms of production, like how to structure a lesson, there's also like a lot of best practices, that you ask like 50 scientists and they will all tell you the same on how to build that. There's input activities, there's certain repetition things, and then there's output activities, and then there's again repetition, and like how you actually structure the 60 minutes is pretty clear. And what's special about us is like when we started, we wanted to actually work with publishing houses, and we asked them, hey, can we license your stuff, right? Like we offer a language course here, and it's like offline, but we would love to use your books here. And then like everybody was like, no, there's no way that you can get any of our books as a PDF, right? So they were very restrictive and protective of their content. So like this is when we actually decided that we had to build our own curriculum. And looking back, this is actually like one of the luckiest coincidences that we have, because like we now have this amazing team of like educators, digital didactics persons, that people that build the most amazing curriculum for online classes, like that use the best like input and output activities that you can do in a given circumstance. And like what is special in comparison, and why I'm so happy to historic traditional publishing houses, is that when a publishing house offers like creates an English book, right? They sit down in the corner in the chamber, like locking the doors, and then like producing something for a long time, and then they launch this as like the first version of this book, right? And then it's very difficult for them to get feedback loops, etc. So this book is going to be like let loose on students for 7 years plus, and for us, like we get feedback after every lesson. And if the feedback is negative, the learning outcomes have not been achieved, etc. Like we can iterate it as we go, as we see fit, and it's absolutely okay for us like to iterate the same learning materials like 10 times in a year, right? This is not the average, but like it does happen when like we have a complex situation like dative versus accusative. Then it's really we can learn on the go and then create the best learning materials that leads to the best learning outcomes of the CFR. And this is special about like our digital education team that does a tremendous job of like keeping everything clean and lean in terms of our learning materials.
That's really interesting. Scott?
So again, I think our approach is a little bit different, because we are focusing on these one-on-one classes and trying to do this mastery learning approach. And so we focused on building curriculum internally from the first day. So we, for all the 4 languages that we offer, we have from essentially 0 through C-level courses, right? So I mean, it's like sitting down and writing 5 textbooks for just to launch a class. And the reason why is because we really wanted to do these one-on-one. My experience learning languages online was that we would take like a scanned copy of some PDF of some group classroom book and then send it and then do it over Skype and like look at, okay, I'm on page 34, right? And we're doing things that are essentially designed for group classes, and it's not one-on-one, and it's not mastery. Like it wouldn't repeat exercises that I really do need to go back and maybe try again, right? But with ours, we're able to, since we can build our own curriculum, or since we did build our own curriculum, we can create a custom lesson plan every time that you join something, And after every exercise, so the exercises are 4 or 5 minutes long, after every exercise, the student and the teacher can say this worked well or it didn't work well, or they struggled with this or they didn't, or I struggled with this, or I found it very easy. And then we can use that data to come back in the next lesson and the next lesson to say, okay, here's what you should probably do today, right? Even if it's with a different teacher. And so that type of flexibility is something that you can only really do if you write your own curriculum. And the nice thing about that is, since we have it on an exercise by exercise basis when we do review, it's very focused, it's very good for the student. And even better, we can get feedback on are exercises taking longer or less time in general than we expected it to do? Are the tutors marking this as difficult to administer? Are the students marking this as struggling, like they're always struggling in it? Maybe it's at the wrong level, or it's designed badly. And we can constantly kind of go back and refresh our curriculum. Like, I mean, we did our German curriculum 4 years ago, and probably every exercise is different today than it was 4 years ago, right? We're constantly going through and saying what works and what doesn't work. The more and more students and the more tutors that kind of go through and do these exercises.
It's really interesting, kind of both you and Felix touching on that, because that's such an advantage, I guess, of online versus a book is going out into the world. Now it exists. Belen, anything to add there?
Yeah, we certainly benefit of people being like, hey, typos. Just, I mean, obviously there's an exercise that maybe feels better and worse, but we've had things like that being like, this is not how you write in French. And we'd be like, thank you. Changed 5 minutes. Took 5 minutes for that curriculum to be changed instead of like the 7 years that would have taken the book. There's 2 other design principles that we keep in mind, I think, when creating curriculum. One is to amplify anything that brings up that communicative approach. So any teacher, any good teacher has a battery of exercise that they could be tapping into when explaining a concept, especially when it comes to group classes. There's a lot of things that you could do. We look at promoting through the curriculum what can enhance student participation, what can maximize the student really speaking. Sometimes to say in a feeling like join the dots exercise is not really going to get you there. So all of the points that can really put the teacher in an easy situation for the student to have to speak up, make that an opportunity to correct the pronunciation perhaps and speak further. And then we also look into amplifying cultural expressions. So when we're teaching you a specific language, we are also looking at enriching that with the cultural nuances of the different places. If we're telling you in Spanish how to say great, you're probably going to have a little bit information in the curriculum of how in Mexico is chévere, and my home country in Argentina we say copado, and there's a few others, to make sure that we're not assuming just there's the default or even worse imperialistic way of teaching you a language and that's the only one that you're going to get. So for us, that's also important to be reflected in the curriculum.
That's very, very true. Neil?
Yeah, not leaving me much to go on. I think that's pretty comprehensive, but I mean, maybe I could add that sort of, certainly on BUSU, we are, because we have a self-access curriculum, we're very much building on top of that and then making sure that the activities that are done in the whichever part of the learning experience are optimized for that capability. So the ones that are better done, like the communicative aspects that are better done in a sort of synchronized session online with a teacher-led environment, are the ones which can actually be done sort of asynchronously. Like a lot of writing exercise is actually better performed asynchronously between amongst the community, for example, and then the self-study stuff. So, I mean, I think sort of a lot of the grammar, basic grammar rules and having that as a reference, you don't want to sort of sit in a lecture type environment when you can just sort of do some interactive self-paced content as well. So again, the balance there is really key. And I definitely, double down on that iterative sort of cycle as well. I mean, the first version, thinking about MVPs for people out there who are kind of thinking about this, we always think like the first version you should be pretty embarrassed of because it's all about learning. It's all about getting something out there and learning quickly and understanding what does work. So I think that's, super important.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move on from curriculum to COVID. big question. Have you seen more student interest in online video classes this past year or so? And if so, how do you envision that changing, staying the same, increasing, decreasing as we go forward, and hopefully things become a little easier? Scott, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll be quick. I mean, we have seen, I think most of the online, I mean, this whole conference, right, is due to COVID. And so I think a lot of what is interesting about it, we have seen an increase in that. I think what is more important is that the entire world has essentially been trained in how to do things online that they didn't think that were a good idea online. And so I think that mentality really will persist in maybe I can do a group class online instead of a group class in person, or maybe I can do one-on-one classes instead of more time, or maybe going to institute or something isn't something that I need to carve out of my schedule and figure out how to do. That maybe online things, just like so many other things in my life, have been able to move online, or I can do more work from home, or whatever. Maybe I can also learn a language from home. And I think that mentality is pervasive. Like I think it's global now, and it will continue to change the way that we all teach languages and learn languages and just build product in general, even if we're not in the language learning business.
Very true. Belen?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, Felix, how massive I've been for you in 2013 to explain to everyone. So this is Zoom. You need to install it first. Then there's going to be a link here, and have everyone lost in the ether and be like, no, come back. It's here, the link. But that has been just massive. Like it's been such a present for the space to not have to explain yourself and have to be able to go straight into the benefits. To me, this is here to stay, because the benefits apply to the new reality, like Scott said. Everything from the availability to the autonomy to the greater freedom of choice. And I also think that the video call fatigue is going to decrease. So there's going to be a number of things that you're now forced to do like this, that you're going to go to do in person. And then you're going to leave this medium for the things that are just convenient. So maybe we see some decrease, but yeah, the huge growth as we've seen over 2020, it's here to stay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Neil?
Yeah, I mean, things were going this way anyway, weren't they? And this has just supercharged it. And you see all those sort of investments from. I think, congratulations, Felix. I think I saw something about investments today, actually. So those investments, they're just getting bigger and sort of growing. And there's a lot of people who previously would have shied away from online learning. They get it now, and it is here to stay. I have to say, I'm very glad my kids are back at school and they're not doing online learning. I think, they're teenagers. They definitely missed being co-located with their peers, and I do enjoy getting back to the office now 1 day a week and sort of getting in front of a whiteboard and getting the proper post-it notes out. Not to knock Miro, of course, it's been a lifeline. But yeah, so one thing we've seen is actually seasonality has now just gone out the window. It's really interesting. Like we always, got a really big peak at New Year, and then you'd get Quitters Week, which is like, Quitters Week would sort of kick in at the end of January, and you'd see that tail off. And then last year, we saw that start to tail off, and there was a massive boost. And this year, it's just kind of plateaued. But one thing that has happened is each peak, the plateau has been much higher than the level before. So, just getting more building on. More and more people are comfortable, and of course, more people have access. I think one of the talks earlier was talking about one story about sort of the refugee coming over, and like that, people are connected now, even in sort of difficult situations like that, and that's amazing. I've been online classes where people are on their phones, maybe that's the only tech they've got, but they still have access. So it's supercharged accessibility as well, which is great to see.
Yeah, actually, just if I can add something, I think that what's really interesting as well, like you're talking about all of these kids doing classes online. One of the things that I think is really interesting about language learning in this world of thinking that online classes are a doable thing, right? Is the accessibility of I would say minority languages, but not having to have a teacher in your school system. Like if you want to learn Spanish, or you want to learn French, maybe German, and you're in a California school, like that might be possible. If you want to learn Arabic, if you want to learn, Mandarin, like there's almost no way that your kid is going to have access to courses like that, right? And so I think the idea of being able to say, you know what, I want to learn a heritage language, I want to learn Korean, right, or something, and having the possibility of maybe even doing that partially through the school system, right? Like having that be something where you don't necessarily have to have a teacher in your locality in order to learn a language, and then just be like, I guess everybody in California learning Spanish because it's essentially all the teachers that we have. I think that's actually really interesting and a real boon for children, right, across, I mean, I'm speaking in America, but I mean, it's the same pretty much anywhere.
It's a very good point. My husband teaches in primary school and does this whole module about Japan and just peppers in a few words here and there. And by the end of it, there's always a whole handful of them that are like downloading all the apps, and they'll come in saying a few new words. It's so exciting to see. And they wouldn't have access if they were relying on a teacher in school. So it's wonderful. Felix.
Yeah, like I mean, like we are growing with the adaptation curve of video chat technology, right? Like more people are using this, and then suddenly they change their mindset, and then they open up their minds to also, wow, I could also learn languages online, right? And this is obviously here to stay, right? Like once you have experienced that and you were able to turn on your microphone, like very clearly, like this is something that you will not, unlearn in the future. And I being a bit more critical here, I do think, there will be a post-COVID time, and there will be certain customer segments that might, go back to like an offline world. Like going to a city, like you're new there, like you're an expat, and then you might want to, connect with people, and then going to a language school is actually like a nice change of scenery. And like for Lingoda personally, we have always attracted a customer segment that learns like for professional reasons. We have less hobbyists, quote unquote, on our platform that learn for the benefit of getting into like German culture. So like in this segment, we are actually very bullish. We are very happy. Like the dumbest farmers always have the biggest potatoes, and like we are really dumb farmers at Lingoda apparently. But I think this segment that learns for professional reason, like it's very clear that this is there to stay. Like talking to our customers, they will not leave us afterwards. And then there might be some segments, the hobbyists, the expats that want to connect in a new city, they might go back to this. But like obviously, like this adaptation curve is going to plateau afterwards, right? And even offline language schools like Berlitz, etc., they think that way. And it's very clear what's going to happen in the next like 2-3 years.
Well, kind of touching on that idea of the future there, I want to talk about that for our final question in terms of technology. So how do you think video classes might evolve? What new technologies are you most excited about? Just a few thoughts on that to wrap up. I think we are starting with Belen this time.
I think on the immediate 2021, I am looking at a lot of new features in terms of interactivity in video calling. Sometimes this is very limited or dependent to the third-party platform that you're choosing, but there's some less known video call services out there doing some amazing things when it comes to how a few people in a situation would interact. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to be part of conferences where you're virtually moving around and hopping and going into different groups. Like you have a lot of different resources as well to play and make the situation even more social. That's something that we're already testing in a few classroom environments and seeing how we can bring it already to this year. And if I look a bit further, I'm not so much of a fan of all of this shiny technology, thinking how virtual reality can be adapted to what we're bringing. I dream more of a super tailored learning approach, that your teacher is able to know exactly why you're learning that language, what's your motivation, that you have an issue rolling the R in French, and that you like more to prepare than to have post support, and make this class for Lindsay Williams rather than for anyone else. That's something that obviously we need a lot of support from machine learning and a lot of data analysis to be able to bring this up. It's not just about using your data, your past data, but actually understanding and predicting what do people with your descriptors and with your signals are doing and need to be successful, and proposing that to you.
Thank you. Neil?
Yes, I think this is it's going to be a great opportunity for accessibility and inclusivity. I mean, we're already seeing like how tech can support people who have special needs, and I think the online classes just provide that. You know, people obviously can join from anywhere, but that's obviously a great bonus for people with mobility problems, and having baked in accessibility support into the tools that we use. So you can already see, like, if you use Google Meet, that's got real-time real-time sort of speech to text going on. It's not there yet, and certainly for non-native speakers, it's not there yet. But the data models are getting better and better, so we will get to that stage where, you know, you can have additional support there in the classroom as well. And just using the mixed modality, I think, will just allow for a lot more accessibility and inclusivity moving forward, which is great.
Excellent. Felix?
Unmute. Looking at the history of what Linguda has done, like we have had I think 11 or 12 different video chat technologies at Linguda, and they were basically very similar. You would see a face, and then you would have a microphone, and then you connect like individually or in a group. And I think for our customers, and I think for most customers, what's really important is this reliability and this ease of use. You know, like it's just easy to connect to Zoom. It's just you click on a button and then the microphone is there, and it's like the sound quality is amazing and it's great, right? And this change was tremendous, like over the last like so many years, and we can see how this directly translates into more engagement from our students. So I think actually like reliability, anything that's like very reliable in the future in like delivering those two things is going to like be the most successful. Like this being said, I'm particularly excited about like virtual reality. Like I did an exit game with the virtual reality glasses, and like the moment I put those glasses on, and then there was a pineapple. I threw a pineapple in the virtual reality, and I was like, damn, this is the future, right? Like I bought like VR glasses, like on my way out, right? Like this is amazing, but like this is still like a technology that's not accessible to like a lot of people, and like the technology like on connecting in this virtual reality, it's also still like we need to wait a little bit for that. And there's actually different other applications that are very interested. Like I've been teaching a class like to my colleagues in an Unreal Engine type of environment where you meet like you would be in Counter-Strike or something like this, but then you meet with a learning context, and like this is actually something that was very, very pleasant and like to a degree of high quality that you like have a voice, and when they go further away the voice will become like quieter, and this was I found it difficult, and I almost wanted to cancel the appointment, but like being there was actually a very eye-opening too, and this is something that I haven't seen so much, but this was an amazing experience. I think this could also be like one part of virtual reality where you can also participate with a traditional laptop computer and still have a very immersive like type of experience. Yeah, these are the two things. I could go on and on and on, but I'm gonna stop here and just mention those two.
I'm glad you talked about VR because someone was asking about that. Scott, just to wrap us up, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what is interesting to me about learning languages is, we have this platform where we're doing these one-on-one lessons, and I think that's very good at practicing output. And then we have, how do you actually get that data into your brain in the first place in order to practice, have something to output? And I think self-study is one of the biggest problems. I think all of these companies have a problem with people sitting down, doing flashcards, or doing games, or doing readings, or finding sort of graded input comprehensible, graded input at the right point, at the right topics for everybody. And so this is one of the things that we've been thinking about for a while, and that we're trying to work on, because we find it the biggest problem, right? Like, how do you get people to study for hours and not have it be demotivating, right? And actually get data into your brain. And actually the last two talks, I think Gabriel and Ed both talked about this problem, and about, you know, ways of trying to make it more interesting, I think, to get input and to get vocabulary. And so I think everybody got an invite for the beta for the German thing for streams, which is one of the things that we're trying out. Of, instead of sitting there and doing flashcards or doing closed tests or something, you know, if you listen to somebody talk about something in context and are seeing images and are seeing associations, like, is that more interesting? Can you do that for longer? Can you internalize those concepts and then go out and practice the output of them? And I think that combination is interesting to me, because I think personally, to answer your question in a general manner, the future of language learning is very human, right? And I think most of the tools that are out there right now are very not human. I think that the live lesson type aspects, whether groups or one-on-one, it doesn't matter. That's really the only humanity that we get in most, sometimes YouTube videos or something, if you can find something at the right level. But really, I think, you know, sort of live streaming group classes or live streaming sort of MOOCs, right? Like that type of I want to hear input. I want to hear what it sounds like when a human being says something, and not when a computer generates something, and you know, not how to read it or how to write the right answer in a closed test, and have this sort of linguistic competence, but have a real communicative competence, and get that from human beings. And I think that technology really being able to put humans together for that is what is possible and still kind of missing in the field.
Excellent. It's very exciting. Well, thank you so much, Scott, Belen, Neil, and Felix, for joining today. And thank you for watching as well. This has been so much fun, and I hope you've enjoyed the whole event. And I think we're going to wrap up there. So thank you again, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.